Hugh Andree is here, the ex-British Army captain, founder of We Served. I see you're wearing the uniform of We Served. Congratulations, good to see you.
Thanks, Mike.
You're looking very well.
Thank you.
VE Day, obviously a huge event for the whole of the country, but especially so more for people who have served and who are still serving.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've put some of our content out on various social media platforms, the We Served social media platforms, which it's all of our veteran employees, members of staff, what it means to them. And it's really interesting how it does mean different things to different folk. But the important thing is, of course, that we remember it. I can understand there's been a lot of noise, in the press this week about, youngsters not learning about it, and I thought, a part of me gets that. Do we celebrate the Battle of Agincourt or Waterloo? Well, actually, some of the military units do, for obvious reasons, because they're battle honours. And what worries me at the moment is the younger generation of veterans, who many don't like to be called veterans because they associate it with, good old boy at the Legion having a pint and playing dominoes. But the problems we tend to have in the country at the moment are the sort of 20 to 30-year-olds who leave the military, have done many tours of duty and seen horrific things, and they fall down between the gaps, and there's no one to pick them up. And that, for me, as much as I remember the sacrifices many made, my grandfather included, from VE Day, I worry today about our younger veterans and what's happening to them.
Well, we've got a little clip. You put a video out, which I watched, I think, last night. We've got a slightly edited version of it, just because it's a bit long, but have a look at this.
My name is Dan Wilkinson, and I was in the Army until 2008, serving in the Irish Guards. When I joined the Army in 1991, there wasn't that much risk. But when those who gave their lives around VE Day 80 years ago, there was enormous risk. Everyone knew that your chances of survival was slim. And therefore, I have an enormous sense of gratitude as we celebrate this milestone 80 years on. Enormous gratitude, giving their lives or volunteering to put their lives on the line so that we may live the lives we do today. And it's a sense of enormous gratitude and the fact that we must never, ever forget what they went through to create the conditions we live in today. Thank you.
And there's many of those sort of appreciations of their people's own, as you say, their own situation. A couple of them slightly different politically as well, talking about what we have to remember about the lessons that we learned from those days and now. But the country also has changed quite remarkably, hasn't it? I mean, looking at the front page of the Express today, where they've got this picture, the famous picture that everybody knows of the two little girls waving the flag, and it paints such a different. It always makes me think of my parents and my mother, who I mentioned this on Monday, because we talked about it a lot on Monday with the fly past and the military parade and all of the great things that the pomp and circumstance of all of that. And I thought to myself, you don't see it that much in Britain anymore, and it felt nice to have it, to have it back.
I often, it really winds me up that sometimes I feel that I'm being forced to almost be embarrassed.
Yes.
For example, on St George's Day.
Yeah, right.
The flag, etc. But I suppose I'm enormously privileged in that I've led British soldiers and servicemen and women on live operations, and we are very, very fortunate in this country that we have the best armed forces in the world. I didn't say the biggest. We most certainly do not have the best kit, but we have the best soldiers. We're a tiny island with a massive heart. And what I will say is, on numerous occasions, I've seen both young men and women, 17, 18 years old, step up. And that makes me proud. And so I do take a great deal of solace in knowing that if someone like Putin came knocking on our door, we would pull together. We would focus, we would switch fire, and we would stand up to any aggressor. And again, that's another lesson learned from the Second World War, and frankly any war, that there's an aggressor.
Yes.
And that aggressor is, ultimately when you stand up for
sometimes
bully,
you have to fight them.
Sometimes you have to whack first.
As much as people don't like fighting, and nobody does, and nobody wants to see that, sometimes you have to.
Yes.
I mean, funnily enough, one of the other stories we talked about this morning was about 18-year-olds driving trains. You would bet your bottom dollar that people coming out of the armed forces, not at 18 obviously, but at say 20, 21, 22, they could do anything.
18-year-olds drive tanks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
18-year-olds ultimately get asked to pull a trigger.
Yeah.
So with respect to driving a train,
Why
happy
not?
days.
Yeah.
And that's something else. We're consistently talking about, people have left this country, they've gone home, we've got all these vacancies and jobs.
Yeah.
We have 20,000 members of the armed forces leave every year.
Yeah.
In fact, at we've just signed a partner with a global technology firm who has said to us, the thing we know about veterans is that their attitude is solid, it's good.
Right. Work ethic.
And all of that, and they have the aptitude to learn. Because once upon a time they weren't a soldier or a sailor, an airman or woman, were they? They were, civilian like me and you. So they've shown the attitude and the aptitude to learn. And this particular company, I'm going to mention the name Oracle, have said, we'd like 900 veterans over the next 3 years.
Right.
No experience required, but we served, and our training partner, AI Core, will not only train them for 12 weeks, we'll pay them. So we're going to employ them from day one and then guarantee them a job for 2 years. And
that's fantastic.
This is how, after which then they go on to the books of, Oracle or whomever. But this is what we need to be doing. And, I saw the announcement of Valor, the latest creation.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Mike, I've seen 8 prime ministers come and go, and my view, and my view is veterans should be looking after veterans, not politicians. I think it's we welcome anything that any government does. Yeah, you ask me in 12 months' time, how it's going. Quite where they got 50 million from, where Johnny Mercer struggled to get 5 or 6, I don't know. But look, as I said, really welcome all support. But let's wait and see.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see what comes out during Armed Forces Week and then on Remembrance.
Have you got a particular remembrance of VE Day from a family recollection, or from just something that you did? Yeah, well, no, just from my grandfather. My grandfather commanded a frigate during the Second World War, actually got sunk, and then he was interned. So we would... he never jumped. It's like that generation. They never really jumped up and I don't think we do as a whole, as a nation, really shout and... No, you have to sort of get it out of
very respectful, But, we always celebrated it and remembered them. My mother was in the Wrens. My mother...
And this is kind of, I suppose, what we thought about on Monday, because, as I say, watching... all the pageantry, which is wonderful, and it makes you feel quite proud to be British. It struck me that we don't feel like that very often. You don't see it very often. And like you say, it's not that we're made to feel embarrassed necessarily by it, but I wonder, just particularly in London, where, I've lived most of my life, and it doesn't seem the same city anymore. It doesn't seem as though you're actually, in the majority of people anymore. I
think you made an interesting point. I said briefly I went to Lincoln on Monday to do some work with the lads who do all our social media stuff.
Right.
On the way back on the train, I couldn't help noticing how many towns had red, white and blue bunting out, outside of London.
Yeah.
I think it's probably more of a London, because it's such a mixed bag.
It is,
but I was really happy. I mean, so many street parties I saw
exactly
on Monday. I haven't seen one in London.
No. And that's the problem.
That's the
problem. Only one you saw was the one in Downing Street, which was a sort of, another stunt by the Prime Minister trying to make it look as if he's patriotic, which he's not really, as far as I can tell.
No. And, you talk about pulling together as a nation. I mean, let's be honest, we did see it during COVID. And we're good at getting things done. Great Britain and the people of Great Britain get things done.
Yeah.
Our soldiers, get
and they were very key to that in the COVID times, weren't they?
So this whole being pressurised to, feel bad, not celebrate. I mean, there are
embrace diversity and all that.
Yeah,
It goes a bit far, doesn't it?
Let's put our own people first.
Yeah,
let's look after our veterans.
Yeah.
Well, of course we're going to look after our cousins. I often use that analogy.
Yeah.
You know, you're in a storm.
Yeah.
You've got a child, and your children and niece and nephew. Look, you love them all.
Yeah.
But you've got to look after your own family first.
Yeah, of course. It's not rocket science, as they say.
No.
Hugh, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We Served. Tell people how to find it if they haven't done it yet.
WeServe.com, we-serve.com, and especially if you're a veteran or a family member, please register because we send out a weekly newsletter and something big is coming down the line in June.
Good stuff. Hugh Andree, former Army, of course, captain and founder of We Served.